I felt like maybe entrepreneurship could give me the chance to do work like this that really challenged me intellectually, that I got to build something I really believed in and all of those things, and have autonomy over what it was going to look like to raise a family.
Welcome to Built to Scale, where we have real conversations with entrepreneurs just like you about what it takes to build a thriving business without sacrificing your personal life. My name is Craig Severinsen, and I help people make more money working with better clients while also working less. And now I'm sharing it all with you. Let's dive in. Hey, what's up, everybody? Craig Severinsen here, and welcome to episode 2 of the Built to Scale show. Today, we're talking with Ashlee Berghoff, and she runs a business called A2 Online. So she helps people implement the systems they need to go from being just themselves, or like freelancer or solo pro, to running a thriving business, being the leader, CEO, all that good stuff. So this episode is full of great stuff. Like, I loved this conversation and I'm excited to share it with you. A couple things for you to look out for. Number one, we talk about the mindset shifts and challenges that come from building a team. We get really serious. Like, we both share some stuff about, the insecurities about building a team that I think are really helpful. A lot of gold there. Number two, we talk about the secret to getting past 6 figures, like refinding that motivation. If you haven't reached 6 figures yet, you're going to find this out. If you're already there, you already know this. But once you reach about that 6-figure level, money isn't as motivating as it once was. So how do you refine that motivation to really grow, really scale your business? She shares some great tips around that. And then finally, Ashlee shares her number one tip. I put her on the spot. I said, what's your number one tip for around business and systems? And she shared just absolute gold. All right, so that's what we got for you. So let's get rolling with Ashlee Berghoff. Let's put up this facade and just like talk about our whatever.
Right. That's how we've been training. Yeah.
It's been really difficult for me, honestly, to be like, hey, wait, what's the ugly part of that? And it's been interesting.
Oh, I'm excited to listen to more of these though, because I think we need that. We want the truth. And we can tell when there's a veneer on things or when people are leaving things out that we need to know, And so we need to start telling the truth too.
And I wonder, that's a great way of putting it. And I wonder how many of us, like, being an entrepreneur, you never feel like you reach the top. You know what I mean? Like, right. You always feel like wherever you're at, it's not good enough.
Yeah.
And so I wonder how many people are just like embarrassed about where they're at, and that's why we're all lying and hyping it up, right? When the truth is like, it's totally cool wherever you're at, it's totally cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. A friend of ours was thinking of starting his business, and I felt this fear rise in me of, what if I tell him how long this has taken for me to figure these things out, or to start learning these things, or where I'm still stuck after 3.5 years. And then he goes out there and just kills it in 6 months. Right. And then I look like a fool. Right. And so there's that weird fear that then it's like, well, you want to kind of play it down or kind of play up where you are, or the things that have worked well, and like tell the truth about those things, but maybe kind of leave out some stuff because we don't want to look like a fool when someone has a different story or gets to a spot much more quickly, or those sorts of things, That's
okay. So 2 thoughts came to mind. Was one, this like fear or like jealousy of like, you see these, man, I try to stay out of those like huge coaching groups. First of all, it's really incestuous, the coaching industry, because it's like coaches coaching coaches. Yep. Mm-hmm. But like you get these like, 25-year-olds that are just like no family, and they're just spending all day like, DMing, and they build these $1 million businesses, and you're just like so upset. You're like so upset. But so I think there is that jealousy that everyone's kind of got,
Yeah, but it's real.
But I saw this article. I read it yesterday about millionaires, self-made millionaires, right? And they put them into categories, and one of the categories was entrepreneurs. And it said on average, those entrepreneurs became millionaires over 12 years. And so that to me, I was looking at that and I was like,
Okay. Yeah.
I like,
That feels more realistic.
yeah, it feels good, right? Like, it's like, oh, okay. So I'm like 5 years into this. I'm not a millionaire. Like,
Mhm.
I'm doing okay. I'm doing well, but I'm not a
Mhm.
millionaire. But
Right.
guess what? Like, I'm probably right where I need to be. So I
Right.
thought it was, nice.
Yeah. Creating time for those things to happen and also being realistic. For me, I started the business for lifestyle reasons and I work 30 hours a week. And next year I want to work 15. Does that mean it's going to take twice as long to get the same place as someone working twice as much? Yeah. And I have to be okay with that.
You know,
Um,
so I've got lots of questions around that because first of all, I
mm,
kind of disagree with that. I think
oh,
that
interesting.
the less that I have worked, the more
Mm,
successful I have been. And I think that there's a limit to that because like I think
mhm.
that if you do nothing, then obviously nothing happens. But
Right. Right.
but to me, if I can focus in and just cut out the things that don't matter, because how much of our business is just like
True.
we feel like business should be that way, right? We feel like
Hmm.
we were born into the 40-hour per week culture, so we think you're
Right.
supposed to be working.
Right.
So if you can cut that stuff out and just focus, I feel like you get more done. But I
Hmm.
want to dive into like why did you I want to dive into more about why you started your business and what do you mean lifestyle reasons? Like tell me more about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was 2.5 years into my last job, which I was kind of an operations person inside a consulting firm, just about to graduate with my MBA and having conversations mainly with the other women in the cohort, but also with the men often of, okay, all of the jobs that are showing up on the job board, all of the leadership development programs that we're being funneled into are all encompassing high travel, high hours,
Mm,
high career sort of jobs. I didn't want that. And it felt very much like a binary. Like you do that or you stay home with your kids. Like
uh,
which one? Which one do you want? Right. And both of them felt like an impossible choice. And so I felt like maybe entrepreneurship could give me the chance to do work like this that really challenged me intellectually, that I got to build something I really believed in, and all of those things, and have autonomy over what it was going to look like to raise a family and how much time I wanted to spend at home with my kids. Um, and so I started it a year and a half before we even had my daughter, but uh, that was the idea was this cannot be the only two choices. There's
yeah.
got to be a way to build a life that isn't just this or that.
Yeah, I love
And I
that.
think that's the case for anyone, right? Not just moms, but people who want to move around a lot or people who have a chronic illness or, a variety of things, um, to try to break out of that whole 9 to 5 till you're 65 mindset, I guess.
You're
So,
you're speaking my language because I did the
yeah.
same. I did the same thing. So for me, my breaking point was I've told the story before, but I was in my office in between two big projects, and they were both events. So I just finished an
Hmm.
event, like literally it was the next day, and my son had just been born, and I was in my office just kind of like pretending to be busy, and I was like,
Hmm.
"What am I
Wow.
doing? Like my
Yeah.
kid is at home,
Right.
brand new newborn, and I'm sitting in the office." Pretending to like work on my computer, like solitaire,
Hmm.
right? Playing solitaire or something. And that to me was a breaking point. But
Hmm.
it was really interesting because at that same time when I left, because I quit and just went all in, right? I quit and went all in on the business. And at that
Hmm.
same time, I had a friend who had gotten a job at, I won't name the place, but it was a well-known financial firm, right?
Sure. Yep.
And they got me an interview and got me and I was like, should I like take this job at this place? And it was exactly what you talked about. The hours were crazy, but the pay was like insane.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
so my friends working that job and I decide not to take it. And for like a long time I was like, I made a mistake, right? Like he's
Hmm.
making so much money and I am not. But
Right.
here's the thing, 5 years later, our income has swapped places and they're
Mm.
still working 60-hour weeks
Right.
and
Right.
I'm living the entrepreneurial dream. So I mean that's the trade-off, right? It's like you take that chance,
Hmm.
but if you build with intention, you can have the best of those both worlds there. And to
Right.
me, I don't think it's worth sacrificing your family for anything, right?
Yep. Yeah. I feel the same way. Um, And yeah, it was fascinating because I'm the only one in my cohort of 70, or even combining with the other cohort to 140, to be a full-time entrepreneur, because the opportunity cost feels so high.
It does.
And it is. Most of the entrepreneurs coming out of my school are out of the other programs, not out of the business programs, which is really interesting. But it's because, I can get this stable job somewhere else, make so much more money. I can't give it up. But I love that my kid needs a break from me sometimes. That's great.
And think about that when you first start too, that opportunity cost, like when you first start, it's really ironic. I was having this conversation with some friends yesterday. I went to a party and they were asking me, about being an entrepreneur. And it's like, they could not fathom what it feels like to not have somebody give you a paycheck, to like be completely dependent on yourself. Like that is just so outside the realm of their reality that it's so intimidating for them. Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So aside from, spending time with the family, like what other goals are you working towards? Like, I'm interested to know, like, entrepreneurship is affording you a different type of life than I think most people, right? So like what other things are you working towards or doing, or in terms of like lifestyle, or different than, the normal people? Putting you on the spot.
Yeah. That's a really interesting question. Yeah. I think, we've also reached this point as a family where, one of the big things for me was I wanted to pay off my student loans. I did not want to quit my job and be like, hey, husband, here's my grad school debt. Have fun with that, and he sees it as our debt, right? He's not separating those things out, but I did. I really wanted to make sure that I was, contributing enough to cover that cost. That will be done this year. And so then it kind of begs, thank you. It begs the question of, okay, most of my money right now goes to that and to childcare. Those things could go away and I could quit. Do I want to? And the answer is no. And so then it kind of begged this question for me of, well, why? If I'm not doing it because I need the money to pay bills or whatever, why am I doing this? And I think for me, there's been a few things that have been just really incredible that I want to continue to double down on. And I think this year was the first year I really found like the thing that feels like my vocation and the thing that I want to contribute to our industry, right? In terms of helping people think about this differently and experience the freedom they started their business to experience, right? And so for me, I'm looking forward to next year when we'll have 2 children and trying to figure out what does that look like for our hours and all of those things. Wanting to get to a point where my business isn't dependent on me at all. It can run without me for months at a time, but that I get the chance to really, lean into that and learn and contribute and be part of that conversation, because I think it matters. And so that's been really interesting too, like wanting to walk the talk, right? Build the kinds of business that I know we can build and be able to step away from it for months. But also wanting to come back into that conversation.
That's really interesting. When we first start our business, it's like survival, right? It's like, we got to make money because we got to make money. And it's like, it gives us this drive where it's just, we are motivated. But then once your needs are taken care of and once you kind of get used to the way entrepreneurship rolls, growth beyond that becomes very difficult because your motivation just disappears, right? And so I love what you're doing here, because that's the key to scale past the 100K mark to the multiple 6 figures, 7-figure level. Like what it takes is for you to say, why am I doing this in terms of like, what do I want to contribute to the industry? And what do I want to see happen with my clients and my business, my life? And I love that you're having that conversation. So my question for you is, you said you found your calling. What is it? What is it that you want to do or contribute to your industry?
Yeah, well, it's going to sound so very nerdy. But
good.
Last summer I started the process of writing a book, and the original idea was, how do you navigate the messy middle of entrepreneurship, right? Especially this transition from kind of freelancing and solo entrepreneurship to building something that is bigger than you, right? Bringing in a team and those sorts of things. Like that transition is so hard. How do you navigate it? And so that's what I started with. And where I ended it basically became this manifesto about the power of systems in business and why it matters and why we as entrepreneurs need to be able to understand it and wield it as a tool. Because I think we think of it as this very kind of, I don't know, staid corporate sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's something for organized people and it's something for people who aren't, in the creative space. But I really came to believe that systems are what enable creative ideas to actually happen, right? And so I want to keep deepening my understanding and conversation around how do we think about and use systems in this space, because there's this whole intellectual, space of systems theory that just doesn't always translate down to the day-to-day lives of people in a way that actually helps them. And then how do we also rethink and reuse how we use time, how we think about time, what's the purpose of time, and how do we use it in a way that works for us? Because most of my clients started their business for lifestyle reasons. They wanted autonomy. They wanted to travel. They wanted free time. They wanted these sorts of things, and they don't get it a lot of the time. They'll go years without a vacation and never be able to unplug. Yeah. And so I want to be part of the conversation around how do we do this differently? How do we make this a truly viable way to have a different kind of life? So that's the thing I'm really excited about and kind of see as my life's work of the thing I really want to continue to deepen and understand and draw all the pieces together and talk about.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's fantastic. And this, again, it's just ironic. This is like, first of all, you're speaking my language. Like this is right down the same alley.
Oh, yeah.
Travel.
Oh, yeah.
But I was literally just talking to some non-entrepreneurs yesterday, and they were asking me about, hey, so when, because they're all working from home now because of COVID, and they're like, when you first started working from home, was it tough to like manage your time or to like do this or the other? And I was just like, you guys think about time differently than I do. Like you think you've got to be in your office working for a certain amount of time. And I think about what needs to be done to move my business forward and how much time can I spend not doing that, spend with my family and with like on my hobbies, I just got, my mother-in-law gave me, she had a cello in her basement. She just gave me a cello. So I decided to pick up the cello. So I'm like practicing the cello and I'm awful at it. Like I just started.
It's not easy to learn.
Yeah, no, it's not. I play the guitar and I'm like, foolish me. I'm like, yeah, it's like the same thing. No, it's not, guys. But, how can I spend 20 minutes a day practicing the cello and prioritizing health and spending time with my kids while still growing a thriving business? And so like that time management piece is so important, and it's a completely different, I think this is why it's so hard to be an entrepreneur, because it's a completely different shift from the rest of the world. You know what I mean? Like you've got to just completely, but if you do it, I mean, the rewards are awesome. You get to learn the cello and spend time with your kids and,
Yeah. Because we've all been raised in environments where we don't have time autonomy, right? In school, with parents, in corporate environments, someone else is telling you how to spend your time, right? So a lot of times we start businesses without any real muscle in that space, or even the idea that we have agency in where our time goes and how we spend it. And it's a weird shift that I didn't think about until I was in it and not spending my time well and realizing that I could do it differently. I could do it however the heck I wanted, whatever was going to work, When you
finally bust out that mold, right? That feeling of like that paradigm shift. It's a big deal.
It takes a minute. Yeah.
So I'm going to put you on the spot and I'm going to say, what is your number one tip? If you only had to give one tip for like time management and systems to entrepreneurs, like what would it be?
Something super simple that has been a huge just weight off for most of the people that I'm talking to is to start separating your ideas from your tasks, which sounds very simple, but a lot of times I'll start talking to someone and we'll look at their active task list and it'll have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things on it, because every time they have an idea, they pop it onto their to-do list. Like, oh, that'd be really cool. I need to start a podcast. They pop it on their to-do list. Ooh, I should write a blog about that, on their to-do list, right? And then it becomes this huge behemoth thing, and they never win. And what's really interesting with me and entrepreneurs is most of them are incredibly tough, incredibly self-reliant, and get in this mindset of, I should be able to do all of this. Yeah. I should be able to handle this, right? If I'm not, I'm ashamed, I am weak, whatever. I should be able to swing this. But this is superhuman and impossible, right? The list that they have. And so what we do when we start, at the very beginning, getting them out of the drowning phase, is saying, okay, let's pick a very small subset of those things, leave them on your to-do list, and take everything else and move it to your ideas list. Every new idea, every new thought, every idea for content, everything else goes somewhere else. And it has to earn a spot on your to-do list in 6-week increments. So that way you're kind of focused for a period of time, but you still have plenty of space to pivot, to implement new ideas, to try something that you hadn't thought about before, right? You're not committing for a year to any course of action, but you're committing for long enough to actually win. Because you're saying, here are my 4 projects. I'm going to do these for the next 6 weeks. I'm going to have new ideas during that 6 weeks. It goes on my ideas list, not my to-do list. And that will way shrink the to-do list down to something that's actually human-sized instead of superhuman-sized.
I love that. That's really, really, really interesting. So what's the things you're working on, like right now? Like, where are you at in your business in terms of, like, this is the next goal or the next level for you? What's that look like?
Yeah. So it's going to be an interesting few months. So I just brought on a couple of months ago our first sales rep team. We got 2 people kind of in that role doing outreach and those sorts of things.
Cool. Congrats.
And so thanks. It's been a very big learning curve for me, because I've never before led or motivated these kinds of team members before. Uh-huh. So it's been a really fun shift. And so we have a group program. As that group program grows, because now we actually have the capacity to take on 30 or 40 people. So it makes sense to have a sales team. I want to hire a coach to sit in the chair that I'm in, kind of sit in that systems coaching chair within the group program, so that by next January, I can step out for 3 months.
See, that's awesome. That's awesome.
So it's going to be an interesting 6 months. It's a lot of change in a period of time, but I'm excited about it. Yeah.
And see, it's so smart. I mean, your whole thing is systems, but it's so smart because you've got, like, in order to make that shift, you have to be using a certain method with your clients to be able to say to another coach, hey, implement my method and get this. That's the only way to get the same result that you're getting, is if you're, like, focusing on the method rather than you as a person, which I think is genius.
Thanks.
I love it. What challenges do you foresee in getting yourself out of the program so you can take that time off? So you want to take 3 months off. Mm-hmm. What challenges are you seeing that you got to overcome? Like, what are the obstacles to be able to do that?
Well, knowing that this is a program of honesty, I will tell you, honestly, it's going to be a very weird mental shift for me. I've done this once before, but only for 5 weeks last time. And to be perfectly frank, there was this weird fear in the back of my mind, like, only I could do what I do in the way I do it, right? Yeah. Only I can do this way, which sounds so arrogant when you say it out loud. And I don't like thinking it, but it's in there, right? And so honestly, I think it will be far less, a coach's ability to reach the outcome or to support our clients or for our clients to love that person, and far more me getting out of my own way and giving them a chance to be themselves, be different than me, and shine in that difference. So it'll be hard for me.
I totally relate to that. And you know what the difference for me though is that when I have other people implement for me, sometimes I feel like it's like when you're doing it, you can see the value being created. You feel it, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I have other people doing it, sometimes I'll be like, oh my goodness, was the value there? Like, they paid for this. Did they get the value? Because I wasn't involved, right? Mm-hmm. And so for me, it's what has really helped me, Ashlee, maybe this will help you too. What has really helped me is that I feel the value in a different way, me personally. So for me, what I have to do is say, okay, for me, for them, the value is created with my employee. For me, the value is going to be created in between the interaction with me and my employee.
Right.
And so that mindset shift really helped me of like understanding that like the value is still being created for the client, and the value for me has to be felt in a different way.
Yeah. And learning to embrace that, because I also, so many of my clients are switching out of direct service, right? They're doing copy for a client to consulting or coaching, right? Saying, okay, rather than writing your copy, you're writing your copy and I'm making it better, right?
Yeah.
And that shift can feel really painful because before you were building this thing out of your own creativity, handing it over, and they loved it. And now all of a sudden you're doing less, and that can feel like you're giving less value, and it's often the opposite. And so I love what you're saying about, in a lot of ways, you're switching the way you see the value, right? You're having to change. It's not even so much the client's perception, but you're changing your own perception of where the value is happening, how that value is being created, and how you're experiencing it for yourself. Because
you know what?
I just saw to feel awkward in it for a while.
Yeah, and I just saw in what you said, this journey of like, when you're doing the direct, you're writing the content, you're getting paid however many cents per word, right? That's a certain value. When you make that transition to the consulting, it's painful for you, but guess what? It's like 10 times the amount of money that you can charge for that, because the value is huge. Right. And when you shift again from being the coach consultant to being the CEO, there's another money jump, because now, you said it earlier, but not directly, but that cap, the what's that called? Your capacity.
Like your capacity ceiling. Yeah.
Capacity is suddenly so much bigger that your earning potential goes from, think about those different stages, right? First, it's like your earning potential is like 30,000 a year. Then it's like 30,000 a month. And then as a CEO, it's like, it's millions. It's literally millions. And you've also created a business that you could potentially sell. Yeah. And that's the biggest payday you'll ever have, is selling your business.
Right. Creating an asset. And just, how validating it is too, to create things within your business that stay in your business.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
Like building things inside the business that strengthen it, rather than making something for someone else, sending it out the door and starting again with the next person. Right.
Yeah.
So it's cool. It's not an easy mental shift, because you are becoming a different kind of leader. Right. So it's fun. It's just not easy.
Well, cool. So we should wrap up. What if someone wants to learn more about you, Ashlee? Where do they go? Where do they find you?
Yeah. So my website's called A Squared. So we're at asquaredonline.com. I also am the only Ashlee Berghoff with an Ashlee with 2 E's who exists in the world. So if you Google me, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook and those sorts of things, on LinkedIn. Those are kind of the 3 that I hang out on. So that's the easiest way to find me.
Awesome.
Sounds
Thanks
good.
so much, Ashlee. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Craig. I really appreciate this conversation and enjoy talking with you too.
Thanks so much for listening. If this episode helped you, share with someone who needs to hear it as well. For more information on how you can work with me and great resources for your business, head over to builttoscalehq.com. Join us next time for Built to Scale. And until then, take some fast, focused, imperfect action. I believe in you. I got your back. We'll talk soon.